Hello, my name is Adam West. I'm here at WorkTime Athletic Performance. I want to talk to you today about bioenergetics, or the energy our body produces to accomplish work, whether that's exercising, doing a hobby, an activity, walking around. Our body needs a way to create that energy so we can accomplish whatever physical task we need to do. So, what is that energy? It is called adenosine triphosphate. I'll refer to it as ATP. It is an organic compound in our body that is used to create work, right, that energy. ATP consists of is a nitrogen base, the adenosine, a ribose sugar, and 3 phosphate groups, right, the triphosphate. So what does ATP do for us specifically? Today we'll mainly focus on how it powers muscle contractions, right? It also aids in the transmit of nerve impulses. It is involved in homeostasis, and it also aids in the synthesis of proteins in our body. So the process of hydrolysis is what breaks down ATP to create that free energy for us to use. So ATP gets broken down with a water molecule to create ADP, diphosphate, and then that free energy that we can use. So at a resting state, our body has about 80 to 100 grams of ATP, somewhere in there. That is not, if we're doing a workout, that is not nearly enough to power our workout or to power a long activity. So our body needs to find ways to generate more ATP. There are 3 systems that our body uses to create ATP. We'll talk about all 3 of them today. We have the phosphagen system, glycolysis, and the oxidative system. So the first one, the phosphagen system. It is the quickest way for our body to create ATP. Immediately when we start work, this system kicks in, and it can last us from about 5 to 10 seconds of work. So whether we're doing a single weightlifting movement like a squat, whether we're doing a powerful throw, a jump, a short sprint, this is the system our body is using. It pulls creatine phosphate from our muscles, and it reacts with ADP. Now remember I said hydrolysis creates that ADP. Creatine phosphate combines with ADP to create ATP, right? That phosphate is pulled from the creatine phosphate, given to the ADP to create that triphosphate group that we want with ATP. That way we have that ATP to create that energy. It is catalyzed by an enzyme called creatine kinase, which that enzyme is activated or triggered in our body when our body senses that there is a lack of ATP. Individuals with kind of a higher resting level of CP has the potential to use the system a little bit longer. I said 5 to 10 seconds. If you're more of a power athlete, you have a lot of type 2 muscle fibers, you may be able to take advantage of the system a little bit longer than others that don't. So during rest intervals, when we're working out, we're doing a set of squats, we're doing sets of heavy squats. This is where our work to rest intervals come into play. If you're doing 3 heavy sets of 1 squat, right? We do that 1 squat, we need to rest, about 3 to 5 minutes because we need that creatine phosphate to replenish so we can use that system again. If you just rest 20 seconds or so between your heavy squats, you're just not going to have that energy to complete that rep again as successfully. Just a quick recap, it is the quickest way we can create energy. However, it doesn't create a ton of ATP. It's just a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 creatine phosphate creates 1 ATP molecule. So if we're doing a longer workout past 10 seconds, we need to find ways to create more ATP faster because our creatine phosphate will run out and now we're without anything to create energy. So the next system I want to talk about is glycolysis. This system kicks in when the first system kind of runs out. We're out of creatine phosphate. It's going to last about 2 minutes. So that 5 to 10 second to 2 minutes of exercise, we are using glycolysis. This is a anaerobic system. It does not use oxygen, as well as the phosphagen system I just talked about also does not use oxygen. So this system uses carbohydrates to create our ATP, whether that's blood glucose or muscle glycogen. So, like I said, in the phosphagen system, we just use 1 CP to create 1 ATP. In this system, we can use 1 blood glucose to net about 2 ATP, or if we use muscle glycogen, we can net about 3 ATP. So right there, we can create more ATP for our work, right? But it does take a little bit longer to kick in. Byproduct of this system, we create that ATP, we create some NADH molecules, we also create pyruvate. And pyruvate will, if there is no oxygen, if oxygen is limited, right, it will turn into lactic acid. That lactic acid will shed a hydrogen ion, and then that's when we feel kind of that burning sensation in our workouts, whether we're doing like a bike sprint or something like that. It is because we don't have the oxygen to flush it out, and we create that hydrogen ions is in our bloodstream. However, if we do have oxygen, that pyruvate can be turned into something called acetyl-CoA, and that will be used in our oxidative system later. So we'll table that for now. But regardless, glycolysis is a system that we're using for kind of our activities that range from that 10 seconds to 2-minute range. So whether that's shorter distant track events, 200-meter runs, 400-meter runs, some swimming events, longer sets of weightlifting, sets of 20, sets of 30, and then also HIIT exercises, high-intensity interval training, as well as some sports such as soccer and football, where you're kind of doing short bursts of energy. You have a little rest, short bursts of energy. We are really taxing this glycolysis. So to review real quick, we use carbohydrates to power this system. We create a couple more ATP than the phosphagen system. However, it does take a little longer to kick in. Now, the third system is about after that 2-minute range and on, we use the oxidative system. So with this system, we can use oxygen to help power our ATP production. This system also allows us to use proteins, fats, and carbs for energy. Proteins, not so much. That one's a little bit more inefficient to create ATP, but we're mostly focused on carbs, and now we can tie in fats. So this system creates essentially limitless energy, right? If we're doing an Ironman event that takes 10 hours, this is the system that's creating that ATP for us, pulling from our fats, pulling from our carb stores. So it includes a ton of steps to create that ATP, over 100 steps, over 100 reactions. So it takes a long time to kick in. It uses what's called the Krebs cycle in the electron transport chain, which is a very complicated system, again, using oxygen to create that ATP. To kickstart the oxidative system, like I said earlier, we had that pyruvate that turned into acetyl-CoA. We can use that acetyl-CoA and go through all these processes to create our ATP. About 33 ATP can be produced from one molecule of blood glucose. So right there, we see that's a ton more ATP versus just the couple or the one that we get from the phosphagen system. However, if we use fats, it takes a little bit longer to produce, but it can create hundreds of ATP at a time. So if we're just running a marathon, nice, slow, steady pace, we have time to use some fats, right? Use a lot of carbs and create a ton of ATP. We don't need that energy immediately right now if we're in kind of a slow, steady run. A couple more points I'd like to point out. When we are working out, our body does prefer to use carbs mostly as energy sources because it is a little quicker to produce that ATP versus fats. However, if you're in just a resting state, right, you don't need that energy rate immediately now. Our body does use fats for energy rather than carbs. About 70% of our energy comes from fats. About 30% of our energy comes from carbs at a resting state. However, when we work out, like I said, that fat usage is going to go down. Our carb usage is going to increase. So just a quick recap on that system. It takes longer to kick in, about over 2 minutes before it kicks in. It can create a ton of ATP, and here we can use fats as well as oxygen to create our energy. Thanks for listening, guys.